Stay with me here. 9 plus 1 equals 10. Therefore, 10 minus 1 would equal 9. 10 games for the Cyclones this year, 9 of which are wins after their win over the Omaha Mavericks. Broken down today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Monday, Cyclone fans. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate you guys for making this your first listen every day and being here every single day. We appreciate it more than you know, really. And if you are listening or if you're watching here on YouTube, whatever you're doing, be sure to subscribe, leave a review so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Big win over Omaha on Sunday. A lot to break down here. We'll go into areas of concern as well. And then obviously we have to round things out with Hilton Magic. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, like I said, 3 big, obviously, points today. We'll break down the game in detail, and then we'll go kind of even a little bit more on the microscopic level. And obviously this game, not a super tight game for the Cyclones, but we'll look at what went wrong in this game. Are there any areas of concern for the Cyclones moving forward? And then to go without mentioning Hilton Magic and talking about it on a more macro or even micro scale, we'll see where that conversation takes us. Would be negligence on my part. So we'll do that in the third segment before we jump into Tuesday's episode. So you'll want to stick around for that because we got more coming on college basketball tomorrow. Okay, first things first. Iowa State takes on Omaha at home, defeats the Mavericks 83-51. Before we get too far into this and it's no longer relevant, I want to mention the Mavericks, sick name. Absolutely awesome name there. Did get a little bit of a touch of concern when I saw that they were called the Mavericks. And, actually a little bit rightfully so. 13 minutes into this game, it's tied up at 21. Okay. Iowa State came out a little bit sluggish in this game, and Omaha made them pay early, tried to keep it close, as close as they could. Unfortunately for the Mavericks, Iowa State then goes on a 20-2 run and doesn't really look back after that. Iowa State ended up winning this, if you can't do the math, by 32 points. Is that what that is? I say, if you can't do the math, honestly, I can't really do the math either. I've said here multiple times, I'm not a math major. That being said, where are the biggest points of emphasis from this game? What do I look at this as I'm sitting here on a Sunday watching this game and now reporting it on a Monday? What stood out to me? If I don't mention Joshua Jefferson's name at all in this episode, I should probably be fired. If I don't mention it about 50 times, we need to look at whether or not I'm doing this job with integrity. This guy seems to be the lifeblood of the Iowa State Cyclones men's basketball team. So we'll obviously touch on him, but there's a couple other names that stood out to me watching this game. Okay, he's not the only guy on the floor, as much as big of a role as he does play in this team's success. There are other dudes out there. Milan Momcilovic, and I'm not trying to butcher this guy's name. I saw on the broadcast they were calling him Milan Momcilovic. So if anyone knows how the correctly, what the correct pronunciation of Milan's name is, throw it in the comments down below. I am seriously not trying to be disrespectful. One of my favorite players on the team. But Joshua Jefferson, Milan, Taman Lipsey in this one obviously stood out to me. Keyshawn Gilbert, wow, stood out to me as well. And these are the same names we've been saying all year, but I just thought they played really good in this game. But then obviously coming off the bench, Heisey is going to be that main dude that I saw. Curtis Jones, kind of the hero against Iowa on Thursday. And we'll talk a little bit more about that Thursday game here in the second segment, so don't worry about that. But he wasn't necessarily impressive, but there are some points of his game I'd like to point out before we round out this segment. Getting things started, though, should we start with the biggest name or kind of work our way up to it? That's a good question. I can't ignore it any longer. We're going with the biggest name, Joshua Jefferson. This guy is simply unbelievable. If you have not either gone to a game or watched a game, outside of just like watching the highlights or watching the box score, you absolutely have to. You simply have to. And if you seem to be, if there's a chance you're rooting for the Jayhawks or you're rooting for, UCF or any Big 12 school, maybe you're rooting for Alabama and you stumble across this podcast, welcome in. We appreciate you for being here. But also, This is not just for Cyclones fans. This is for anybody who appreciates basketball needs to be watching this guy play. It's unreal. Okay. He can do it all. Okay. He can work his way in, make some post moves. Boom, you're up and in. Okay. He can make the tough baskets. He can make a guy miss and get himself a wide open bucket. Okay. In the paint there. It's unbelievable. He can, the where this stands out to me the most is he can make the assist game look like child's play. I thought about it. I wanted to do this so bad. I wanted to stand up here on set and recreate this sick assist that he had, which I can't do it. Okay. I just can't do it. I am not Joshua Jefferson. But essentially, he hit him with one of these little fake to the top of the key movements and then brought his arm around the back, one arm behind the back pass, and it was on the money. So that's just one play. And let's not get caught up in one play as much as we try not to get caught up in game by game here at, with Locked On Cyclones. It doesn't always go that way. Sometimes I end up getting a little bit too locked in here, and that's on me. But this guy did it all game, pretty good look inside. Definitely a bucket that Joshua can make. All of a sudden is getting kicked out to the corner for a wide open three by Milan. He's got unbelievable basketball IQ. One of the best additions, I'm getting to the point of in Cyclone basketball history. I can't believe what he's doing for this team, not only obviously on the offensive side of things, but also rebounding. He had 8 rebounds in this game, 6 on defense. That's going to be big. If you let the other team get 4 or 5 shots up before they either make it or you get the rebound, that's just 4 or 5 more chances for them to get points. The more defensive rebounds, the better. 2 offensive rebounds, that's second chance points for us. Went 5 of 9 from the floor and 2 for 4 from the free throw line. So 50% there, 13 points, total of 3 assists, and then obviously 8 rebounds. So not quite as close to that triple-double as he was against the Hawkeyes, but still a key factor in this game. Nonetheless, Milan shot 5 of 7 from the field, 13 points for him as well. I was a big fan of what Milan was able to do in this game. Deshaun Jackson didn't make a whole lot of noise, 6 points, but still obviously pivotal. What do we got here? 4 rebounds for Deshaun Jackson. Big fan of that. Tamin Lipsey, however, we've talked a little bit about his kind of lull in points scored. He came out with 11 in this game, but it gets a little bit deeper than that. And then Keyshawn Gilbert with 16 points leading the way for the Cyclones. His ability to drive the hoop and finish is simply unmatched. If he gets within about 3 feet, I automatically assume it's going in. It doesn't matter if there's 4 people around him. A play that wasn't quite talked about enough, but I did mention against the Hawkeyes was when he split 2 defenders, went full Jordan logo-esque, little bit of jelly on that jam-type bread beat, and all of a sudden, that's a free 2 points. If you get Gilbert within 5 feet, I like the odds very, very heavily there. And then obviously coming off the bench, Nate Heisey, 10 points for him. What do we got? 5 rebounds and then 2 assists. So pretty valiant stat line there coming off of the bench. The biggest play I thought came in the midst of some struggles for Iowa State during that point of the game, but big strip, play on the ball on what otherwise would have been a pretty open bucket for the Mavericks. Ended up being that the Mavericks scored on that anyways, but I just liked his heart there. Heisey, like we said, that guy who's always going to be right where you need him to be. So I'm a big fan of that. Jones, I mentioned obviously going 0 for 5 from deep. You're going to have off days for sure. He went 2 for 9 from the field with 4 points, but also had 6 assists, game high. So big fan of really the whole lineup here. I'm looking at this box score and I just don't see a whole lot of major concerns player to player, but there are some things that we probably should address as a whole. But before we do, I actually want to mention really quick, Cyclones 9-1 on the year. Great start to the season. I think that's the 4th best start. I know it was since like 2013, but I don't know if that's all time or not. They threw up a graphic and it kind of came and went really quickly. So I didn't get exactly that information perfectly, but we'll cover that more in the 3rd segment as well. So like I said, couple of concerns for this team, but we'll address whether or not those are major concerns right after this. Get ready to start the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And also, you can bet on the Iowa State Cyclones. I took a look here. Iowa State to win the Big 12 Conference regular season is plus 200. Getting them at plus money right now feels completely free. And I know I will certainly be looking into that. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so we have broken down the game between Iowa State and Omaha, and specifically some player performances that stood out to me, why the Cyclones were able to come away with that win. But you are here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Locked On Cyclones doesn't just cover the highlights, okay? We've also got to look at, are there concerns around this team, and what do the Cyclones need to address moving forward so we can be cutting down the nets in April? All right, let's take a look. I've got 4 big ones here. And obviously it started early, but I did see some of these kind of leak in to when the Cyclones were up by 30 points. Now, I will also throw this in here. It's tough to evaluate these, I guess, shortcomings of the Cyclones when we're up by 25 points. I completely understand that. But, I hate to say this because this is a little bit of a cliche. How you do all the small things is how all the big things are going to work out. That's not the exact quote. I don't know it off the top of my head, but the concept remains. And if if these issues are coming around when you're up by 25, you can't tell me that they're not going to at least show glimmers when it's a tight game, down 2, down 3, whatever it might be, with a couple minutes left. And we can't be having these. Okay, we simply can't be having these. First things first, Iowa State had a 12 turnover day. Don't love that. And that kind of feeds into this right here where I've got fine line between fast and sloppy. This Cyclones team has the ability to play off of turnovers, to get free points, to play fast. But I do think that the line for some teams is different than that of others. Some teams, they kind of got like a bar, right? It's just like a thick strip where they can play in that zone of really, really fast, but not quite step over into the sloppy or, to mention their own turnovers, right? I think the Cyclones might be towing a very, very thin line there. From what I've seen, when they start to push the pace to a significant degree, the wheels kind of fall off the bus a little bit. And what I like to see, though, is that they can reel it back in. If they ever find their, where they settle in a little bit, then they get back on that roll. That's not concerning to me. It's when they push that pace, things can get a little bit out of hand. I mentioned the Nate Heisey kind of strip early. I think it was right around the halftime mark. I don't have a number for you on that one, but broke up a play. Pretty solid defensive play. Iowa State comes away with it. Then we're trying to push to the floor. Things get sloppy. All of a sudden, Omaha comes away with another free 2. Now, not the end of the world because we stopped at 2 and then it gave up a 2. So it's like we didn't go down 2 possessions on that one deal, but I just would have liked to have at least seen Iowa State have an offensive push there. And then there was a period in time where this can happen to any team ever. I remember my 7th grade AAU team, we would fall into this trap of all of a sudden you're just bringing the ball up the floor and firing threes, or you're firing in little passes into the paint that go haywire, or it's a quick shot. It's whatever, heavily contested. Sometimes the Cyclones push that pace just a little bit too much, in my opinion. Iowa State, I think, is better in the half court, getting people open, ball movement. So when they push that pace, it's not that they can't, and I've seen that they can, and it can be a weapon for the Cyclones. That's just a little bit of a concern for me, and we saw it play out pretty early in this game, and 12 turnovers is a direct number that you can't argue with. Literally, the number is 12. That is the number. That number's pretty high. I don't love that. You're not going to win games against the best of the best with 12 turnovers unless you're able to get, I guess, 12 back. And even then, you're kind of wasting a 12 turnover game. So I don't necessarily love that. Speaking of what I don't necessarily love, it's kind of a dual-edged sword. Same thing, actually. It feels like Iowa State is switching to more of that aggressive side of the dual-edged sword, especially here with double teams. I was going to say it's simply up top. It's I noticed it in the trap in the half court. Defensively, Iowa State pushes for that trap in the high corners. pretty often. And then I was rewatching the game and I noticed that they do it down low as well. They will just send all units to whoever has the ball. It's not every time, but quite often. And all of a sudden, you've got dudes wide open around the perimeter for an open look. Doesn't mean they're going to make it every time, but they sometimes do. And so I think this is it's a questionable one. I don't know if this is necessarily a concern moving forward because the smothering defense, it pays off quite often. It's not a for nothing type of approach to the game. It's just concerning to me that sometimes it's giving them wide open looks. And in high traps is more concerning to me with like 4 minutes left or 5 minutes left in the first half. Like, I mean, I can see it, but I don't. That to me is more concerning than doubling down towards the hoop and giving someone a free kick. That they're different. I understand that. I'm not a basketball head by any means, so what I'm saying here might not make any sense. And this is just how I'm interpreting the game. I just feel like sometimes Iowa State very, very aggressive on defense, and it leads to free points for the other team. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that there because there's so many caveats to that. I'm going to leave it there. That's what I took away from it. And then finally here, slow starts for the Cyclones. Could this be a problem for the Cyclones? We kind of saw it against the Hawkeyes on Thursday, and then today being tied at 21 with 7 minutes left in the first half here. You're probably thinking, I don't know if this is a big concern, but I'd rather see them start a little bit faster. Let me give you a couple of lines here just that we can address before we dive into, is this a concern? First off, this is finals week upcoming for the Cyclones here at Iowa State University. So got to remember, these guys aren't just professional basketball players. All they have to worry about is ball all day, every day. I'm sure that these guys' ball doesn't leave their mind. Ball is life for these dudes, clearly, because you can't be that good without it being life at this point. But they do have other things to address. So obviously, finals week going to play a role here. Okay, some of them might have a final due Sunday night. I know as a student, sometimes that's the case. Professors do weird things. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes your final isn't due Thursday or a set time on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So they might have a few finals even yet Sunday night. And then going into the week, when do you prep? You don't prep 30 minutes before your exam. So keep that in mind. And then also an emotional win over the Hawks on Thursday to keep it within the basketball realm. That's something that can't really be understated. It's an emotionally charged environment. Cyclones, obviously haven't won there the last 4 times. Wanting to get that win to propel the Cyclones to that next level almost. It feels like that's a tight rivalry game. Cyclone State now. I think that's something that has to be addressed. That being said, the slow starts is a little bit of concern for me. I think they can turn this around. I think there are, it's a rivalry game against the Hawks. And then coming off of that win plus finals week in this game, I think there are circumstances for, why it's a slow start and therefore it can be turned around. But we can't leave it this way. Things need to kind of switch up here. I don't want to be down 15 to, Auburn in a revenge game at halftime and have to claw our way back. I just think if we can keep it close and then play that methodical Iowa State type basketball, Iowa State style basketball, we're going to be in a much better spot than starting slow. That sounds like a completely ridiculous statement. I completely understand that, but that's just the way that I see it. That being said, the Cyclones may have a few issues that we have to tune up, but this team is very, very good. And where do they play? In my opinion, the best home stadium in the entire nation. That coming up right after this. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then, the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So on today's episode, we've talked a little bit about the game as a whole, individual performances. How did the Cyclones propel themselves to a win over the Omaha Mavericks? Then in the second segment, which I hope made sense, we broke down some things that maybe the Cyclones could do better moving forward. Here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, it's kind of my job, journalistic integrity-wise, to point out the things the Cyclones could do better. But as a fan, without this microphone in front of me, I am just like, the Cyclones are the greatest. They do this well. They do this well. They do this well. Tally, 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 count, count, count. Boom. Cyclones greatest of all time. Okay, end of story. But, I should probably, for the show, for you listening, I should probably talk about some of the things we need to do better. And if it didn't come across in a perfect way, that's because it's hard for me to talk about. It really is. But you know what's not hard for me to talk about? Hilton Magic. This place is simply special in more ways than one, in immeasurable ways. But before we get to the immeasurable stuff, let's take a look at some numbers, shall we? Iowa State, 6-0 at home this season, 9-1 total, taking the sole loss to Auburn at the Maui Invitational. 6-0 at home. Well, that's pretty good, wouldn't you say? I mean, 6 wins. Well, that's one more than 5, and 6-0. There's no number greater than 0 in the loss column. So, I feel like that's pretty good. We've taken care of business. Well, just hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have one, but I'll hold on to my hair. The Cyclones are on a 24-game home win streak. That is pretty good. I mean, that is a very solid number. We started this episode off with math, and that's about the extent of my math knowledge. This counting to 24, that's a pretty big number, and the Cyclones have reached it with home wins in a row. Unbelievable. Okay, and why is that? Why is Hilton so special? What makes it so magical? Well, that's where you can't really get into actual numbers, okay? And all I have in my notes here, general aura, to use a Gen Z or whatever the current, the youngins say. I don't know very well, but aura is what I'm getting at here. And that's something that I have to put my pen down, and I have to tell you from personal experience and as a Cyclone watching the game, what is this all about? Okay. First things first. It's called Hilton Coliseum for a reason. Place is huge. Place is absolutely enormous. And that's how it can get so loud. I went to a game last year. Iowa State BYU stood out, obviously. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the highlights. That game was awesome. And it sounded that way. The way that I think some sort of maestro must have built Hilton, because the way the sound reverberates off the walls and the people, and it makes it a deafening experience. And I can only imagine what they're hearing down on the floor. So very, very special in that regard. But also the other side of that coin, as I've talked about, there's two sides to every coin. We have to touch on them both. It can get so loud in Hilton because it is so big, and the way that it's built, it can get so deafeningly loud. It makes the silence very, very noticeable. Iowa State, whenever we're shooting free throws, that place is dead silent. And the coolest part, I don't know if you've seen this, is the tradition for the Cyclones. Everybody clapping in unison. Boom. It's just like player gets the ball. Everyone, boom, hands are up. We got the little dangly fingers. Swish every time. Obviously, we know the Cyclones are making their free throws. That's not what we're here to talk about. But the silence in that Coliseum is simply immeasurable. It is unbelievable to go from the loudest of loud, top of the top, then to go down to basically you can hear a pin drop. And this is a perfect segue to the broadcast today. It was pretty loud in a game in which the Cyclones were winning by a good margin for majority of this game, about 20 or more for most of the game. And it, like I said, pretty loud. And then all of a sudden, Iowa State would go to shoot, and it'd get dead silent. But how could you tell on the program? I mean, they don't have mics, necessarily all over in there. I mean, maybe they do, but that's not what they're trying to broadcast so much. They're trying to get the announcers, the broadcaster's voice out to the media, out on the TV waves there, right? Well, that's where you noticed it, because you've got them calling this game. Here comes Keyshawn Gilbert up and in and one. They're yelling. This is very loud environment for them to be calling games. And then it gets to the free throw line, right? You get that and one call. All of a sudden, you hear the announcer's voice kind of dim down. They kind of have to call a game like this because you can't yell in a stadium in which it is dead silent. Dead silent. So, yes, the crowd plays a huge role in Hilton and the magic that it brings to the team. Like I said, 6-0 on the season, 24 straight wins. If you want to look at more numbers here, 11 home games and 10 away. We have more home games than we have away games for the rest of the year. That's exciting, but that's all kind of future stuff, so I can't really talk on that too much. But to go back, I'm kind of flipping back and forth here, but I want to go to the general aura side of things. When you walk into this stadium, into this Coliseum is what I'm going to call it, you just instantly feel it. And I can't tell you what it is because it's kind of like one of those things that just is, It is. It exists. The feel of that, it just like gives you juice, okay? When I left that BYU game last year, I did not leave the same human being that I went in as. If you haven't been to a Hilton game, you need to go. If you've only seen them on TV, if you're here in Ames, bang, just quick drive down the road. If you're from another city, state, continent, planet, find yourself some intergalactical travel, my friend, and find your way over to Ames to experience this environment because it's unlike anything else. And I'll say, this is kind of where I'm going with this. The Cyclones will feed off that energy all year long. There was a few stats that I didn't get to in the first segment that I want to touch on really quick. Iowa State held Markel Sutton to 3 points. Omaha's leading points per game scorer with 16.2 on the season held him to 3. Okay? Lipsy and Jones went 0 for 9 from 3. But the we talked about the general vibe and what this Cyclones team is now. But doing it at home, I think propelled these guys to to very respectable performances. Jones with his game high 6 assists, Lipsy with tough D on the ball, just overall toughness, and then his driving to the rim kind of saw a boost. No, didn't have any 3-pointers, and I believe he had 11 points. So that's, you tell me, is that good? Is that good? Pretty solid. I'm not going to tell you it's not. And then obviously it just kind of dribbles its way down the whole lineup there, and I think that this is going to be something that Iowa State can piggyback themselves. Going into that Big 12 lineup gauntlet, if you will, of the schedule, the Big 12 is a tough place to play basketball. They'll face Morgan State on 12/22, and we'll talk about that this upcoming week. They'll face them on Sunday, and that'll be another non-conference game. But then it's just right into Big 12, okay? 20 games against some of the top opponents, basically every game being a Sweet 16 type level matchup for the Cyclones. To say that they need help is wrong. I think this team can outright win the national championship, and I know I'm not alone in that statement. But getting a little bit of help never hurt anybody. You know what I mean? It's just literally help is a good thing in most situations. So the Cyclones playing 11 of those games at home is going to be big. It really is. When it gets down to the wire and we're facing Colorado at home, or we're facing Texas Tech at home, or we're facing BYU at home, and these are big games that matter, and the fans are there, it's going to play a role. I'm telling you right now. And I couldn't be more proud to be a Cyclone because, I think this statement might not ring in the right way, so that's why I don't want to necessarily say this, but I think a lot of Cyclone fans would not disagree with me in the statement that Iowa State athletics has kind of been pushed to the wayside for a long time. Should it be? No, in my opinion. Okay, it simply is one of the best environments: football, basketball, gymnastics, wrestling. Great years. We did have some down years. I'm not going to say that's not true, but to say that, they've kind of been a subpar program. And now people are starting to turn their heads. Yes, the football success was big, but basketball as well. And people are starting to notice, hey, Iowa State fans are real. These guys and girls mean it. They love basketball. They're very smart about the game. They know when to cheer. They know what's going on. The place gets loud. I couldn't be more proud and excited to be a part of one of the best home environments in college basketball, period. Not the Big 12, not in Iowa, not in Ames, because then you have to compete with the high school. No, in the entire nation, world, solar system, galaxy. How far out do you want to go? We'll be top 5 no matter what. It especially helps that there, as far as I know, not a lot of galactic basketball teams. Maybe Space Jam is one. I don't know exactly for sure. But I'll tell you this much. That's just kind of where I'm at with the Hilton Magic thing. I just think that, yes, the team is very, very good this year, and we have a very, very real chance of winning it all. But I know the fans are going to be at their backs the entire season, and with 11 home games, and then the Big 12 championship being down in Kansas City, pretty close. Iowa State does travel well. That's promising as well. It's just, to me, Hilton Magic going to be a big role, but I also kind of wonder if maybe this is bigger. Maybe this is now the Cyclone men's basketball Magic, which doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but I think this year will be very, very special. Can't wait to see what they do. Thank you for joining me today on Locked On Cyclones, making it your first listen or watch every single day. I appreciate you guys. Be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state, proven this last week on the court. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.